The music stopped. The clinking of crystal glasses ceased. As Cecilia descended the velvet-lined staircase, the room went dead silent. But it wasn't the gasps of the elite that made her blood freeze. It was the low, dangerous growl of her boss cutting through the silence. "Who allowed you to wear that?" Cecilia Garcia was not a woman who blended into the background, though she had spent the last 3 years trying her hardest to do exactly that. At 28, she was undeniably fat. She carried her weight in a soft, protruding belly, wide, heavy hips, and thick thighs that chafed if she didn't wear the right hosiery. In the sterile, glass and steel world of corporate Chicago, where the women in the executive suites subsisted on iced lattes and almonds, Cecilia was an anomaly. But she wasn't just any executive assistant. She was the gatekeeper to Dallas Russo. Dallas Russo was the CEO of Russo Logistics, a shipping conglomerate that controlled 70% of the freight moving through the Great Lakes. To the public, he was a ruthless businessman, a titan of industry with a jawline carved from granite and eyes the color of winter ice. To the underground world, he was the undisputed head of the Russo Syndicate, a man who could order a hit over his morning espresso and sign a billion-dollar merger before lunch. He did not tolerate failure. He did not tolerate incompetence. And for 3 years, Cecilia had been his flawless, indispensable right hand. She survived in his world by wrapping herself in a uniform of invisibility. She wore tailored, boxy black pantsuits, high-necked blouses, and sensible block heels. She tied her dark hair into severe, uncompromising buns. She allowed no room for her femininity, no space for anyone to comment on her body. To Dallas, she was simply Garcia, a brilliant machine who managed his illicit ledgers, organized his legitimate meetings, and anticipated his every brutal need, until the night of the Oceanside Foundation Gala. The gala was the social event of the season, but in reality, it was a summit. The heads of the major crime families from New York, Miami, and Chicago were gathering under the guise of philanthropy to renegotiate shipping routes and launder millions through silent auctions. Dallas needed Cecilia there. He needed her eidetic memory to track who was speaking to whom. And he needed her ironclad discretion. "I need you at the Waldorf by 8, Dallas had barked that morning, not even looking up from his mahogany desk. "And buy something appropriate. We will be surrounded by the worst vultures on the eastern seaboard. You represent me tonight." You represent me. The words had echoed in Cecilia's mind all day. She had gone to a high-end boutique on Michigan Avenue, fully intending to buy a shapeless black velvet gown. But then she saw it. It was a dress made of heavy, liquid crimson silk. It had a deep sweetheart neckline, off-the-shoulder sleeves, and a corset bodice that surrendered to a dramatically draped skirt with a thigh-high slit. It wasn't designed to hide a plus-size body. It was designed to worship it. When the saleswoman had zipped her into it, Cecilia stared at the mirror in shock. The structured bodice pushed her heavy breasts up, creating a dizzying display of cleavage. The silk clung to the curve of her stomach and the flare of her hips, celebrating her sheer mass rather than apologizing for it. For the first time in her life, she didn't look like an oversized assistant. She looked like a queen. She looked dangerous. Now, standing in the foyer of Dallas's sprawling penthouse at the Ritz-Carlton, Cecilia felt a sudden, crushing wave of regret. She clutched her silver evening bag, her heart hammering against her ribs. Dallas emerged from his master suite, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo. He was a terrifyingly handsome man, radiating cold authority. "Garcia, do you have the encrypted files on the—" He stopped dead. The silence in the penthouse stretched, pulling taut like a wire about to snap. Dallas's cold blue eyes locked onto her, and the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. He didn't just look at her, he devoured her. His gaze dropped to the exposed swell of her breasts, trailed down the crimson silk gripping her waist and belly, and lingered on the thick, pale expanse of her thigh, visible through the slit of the dress. Cecilia swallowed hard, her confidence evaporating. "Mr. Russo, I have the files on the secure tablet." Dallas took a slow, deliberate step forward. The air between them grew heavy, thick with a sudden, suffocating tension. The polished veneer of the CEO vanished, replaced entirely by the predator that ruled the Chicago underworld. "What are you wearing?" His voice was barely above a whisper, rough as sandpaper. You told me to buy something appropriate," Cecilia stammered, taking a small step back. Her heels clicked nervously against the marble floor. "I said appropriate, Cecilia." He used her first name, and the sound of it sent a jolt of electricity down her spine. He closed the distance between them, towering over her. He smelled of rich bergamot, expensive scotch, and the faint metallic tang of gun oil. "This is not appropriate. This is a goddamn provocation." "I can change," she whispered, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She had known it was a mistake. She was too fat, too exposed, too ridiculous in this dress. "I have my black suit in the car." Dallas's large, calloused hand suddenly shot out, his fingers wrapping around her thick upper arm. His grip was tight, bordering on painful, grounding her in place. "No," he growled, stepping so close she could feel the heat radiating from his chest. "We don't have time. But understand this." He leaned down, his lips brushing against the shell of her ear. "There will be 300 men in that ballroom tonight. Killers, thieves, and animals. If a single one of them looks at you for more than a second, I will gouge his eyes out. Do you understand me?" Cecilia's breath hitched. It wasn't disgust in his voice. It was possessiveness. A violently territorial rage. "Yes, sir," she breathed. "Let's go," he snapped, abruptly releasing her and turning toward the private elevator. "And stay close to me. If you wander out of my sight, you're fired." The drive to the Waldorf Astoria was agonizingly silent. Sitting in the back of the armored Maybach, Cecilia felt the weight of Dallas's stare burning into the side of her face. He sat with his legs spread wide, taking up space, the dim streetlights flashing across the hard angles of his face. Halfway there, without a word, Dallas shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket and threw it roughly over her lap, covering the slit in her dress that exposed her thigh. "Keep it there," he muttered, staring out the darkened window. Cecilia gripped the luxurious wool of his jacket, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. When they arrived, the entrance to the Waldorf was a circus of flashing cameras and valet attendants. Dallas stepped out first, buttoning his jacket, and then extended a hand to Cecilia. The moment her sensible heel hit the pavement, the atmosphere shifted. She was used to being invisible at these events, the shadow walking 2 paces behind the great Dallas Russo. But tonight, in the crimson dress, she was a beacon. As they entered the grand ballroom, heads turned. The elite of the underworld, men in dark suits with gold eyes, and women draped in diamonds and starved to perfection, stopped their murmuring. Cecilia felt a flush creep up her neck, acutely aware of her size, of the sheer amount of space she occupied in a room full of sharp, thin edges. Dallas's hand immediately moved to the small of her back. It wasn't a gentlemanly gesture. It was a brand. His fingers pressed firmly into the soft, yielding flesh above her waist, guiding her forward with an iron grip. "Eyes up, Cecilia," he murmured into her hair. "You look down. They smell blood. You belong to me tonight. Act like it." They spent the first hour navigating the shark-infested waters of the summit. Cecilia performed her duties flawlessly, mentally cataloguing the whispered agreements between the Irish mob from Boston and the remnants of the Gambino family. But the tension in Dallas's frame was escalating. Every time a man's eyes lingered on Cecilia's cleavage or tracked the sway of her wide hips, Dallas's grip on her back tightened until it bruised. Then Lorenzo Costa found them. Lorenzo was the undisputed king of the Miami syndicates. He was the antithesis of Dallas, where Dallas was cold, brutal force. Lorenzo was all sunshine, poison, and lethal charm. He wore a stark white tuxedo jacket that contrasted sharply with his deep olive skin and slicked-back dark hair. He was flanked by 4 massive bodyguards, but he walked with the lazy grace of a leopard. "Who, Dallas?" Lorenzo purred, approaching their cocktail table. "Always a pleasure to see the Ice King of Chicago descending from his throne." "Lorenzo," Dallas replied, his voice devoid of warmth. His hand instantly dropped from Cecilia's back to her hip, pulling her flush against his side. "I didn't think you'd leave the swamps this time of year." Lorenzo laughed, a rich, melodic sound, but his dark, serpentine eyes immediately slid past Dallas and landed squarely on Cecilia. A slow, hungry smile spread across his face. "And who is this?" Lorenzo asked, stepping closer. "Dallas, you usually surround yourself with walking skeletons. Those brittle little things that look like they'd snap in a strong breeze. But this..." Lorenzo's eyes raked over Cecilia's heavy, voluptuous frame, lingering explicitly on the swell of her stomach and the generous curve of her hips. "This is a masterpiece, a true, magnificent woman. Botticelli would have wept to paint you, mia bella." Cecilia froze. She wasn't used to men acknowledging her body, let alone praising it with such raw, unabashed hunger. Dallas's entire body went rigid. "This is my executive assistant, Garcia, and she's busy." "Garcia?" Lorenzo tutted, ignoring Dallas and reaching out to take Cecilia's hand. Before Dallas could stop him, Lorenzo pressed his lips to her knuckles, his eyes locked on hers. A beautiful name for a beautiful creature. "Tell me, Cecilia, does Dallas treat you well? Does he appreciate the absolute goddess he has in his employ? Because if he doesn't, Miami is beautiful this time of year. I would build a golden cage for a woman like you." "Back off, Costa," Dallas snarled. The air in the room instantly turned lethal. Dallas's bodyguards, stationed 10 feet away, reached inside their suit jackets. Lorenzo's men mirrored the movement. The surrounding guests went dead silent, stepping away from the imminent violence. "So protective," Lorenzo chuckled, finally releasing Cecilia's hand, though he didn't step back. He tilted his head, studying the dynamic between the two of them. A cruel, knowing glint sparked in his dark eyes. "But tell me, Dallas, does the lovely Cecilia know exactly why she works for you?" Cecilia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Quiet, Cecilia," Dallas commanded, his voice a lethal whip crack. He stepped in front of her, shielding her from Lorenzo's view. "Walk away, Lorenzo, right now." Lorenzo merely leaned to the side, catching Cecilia's eye over Dallas's shoulder. His smile was razor-sharp. "Such a loyal, devoted secretary," Lorenzo whispered, his voice carrying perfectly in the tense silence. "Tell me, Cecilia, Does your boss pay you enough to cover your brother Arthur's gambling debts? Or did he conveniently forget to mention that 2 years ago he bought Arthur's markers from the Moretti family? You aren't an employee, sweetheart. You're collateral. The words hit Cecilia like a physical blow to the chest. The ballroom seemed to spin. Her brother, Arthur, had struggled with a severe gambling addiction years ago, but he had sworn to her he had paid off his debts and gotten clean. She had believed him. She stared at Dallas's broad, unyielding back. "Dallas," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Is it true?" Dallas didn't look at her. He kept his eyes locked on Lorenzo, his jaw ticking with a rage so profound it seemed to warp the air around him. "I am going to kill you for that, Costa," he promised, his voice a low, mechanical hum of pure violence. "You can try, Russo." Lorenzo smirked, taking a graceful step backward. "But I think your pet has figured out the cage is locked. Have a wonderful evening, Cecilia. My offer stands." As Lorenzo melted back into the crowd, Dallas finally turned to face her. The possessive, territorial heat that had been in his eyes all night was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating wall. Cecilia looked at the man she had dedicated 3 years of her life to, the man whose possessive touch had just thrilled her minutes ago, and realized she was staring at her warden. The glittering chandelier above them seemed to blur into a halo of jagged, blinding light. The classical quartet playing in the corner of the Waldorf ballroom faded into a dull, underwater hum. Cecilia could only hear the frantic, rhythmic rushing of her own blood. Collateral. She looked down at her hands, trembling violently against the crimson silk of her dress. For 3 years, she had believed she was Dallas Russo's equal in the boardroom, his brilliant, indispensable strategist. She had endured the crushing hours, the moral ambiguity of cooking books for a crime syndicate, all because he paid her an exorbitant salary that kept a roof over her head and allowed her to finally build a life of independence. But it was a lie. She wasn't an employee. She was a hostage. "We are leaving." Dallas's voice was a low, dangerous rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. He didn't wait for her response. His large hand clamped down on her wrist, not with the protective, branding touch from earlier, but with the unyielding iron grip of a warden. "Don't touch me," Cecilia hissed, trying to yank her arm away. But he was a man built from violence, and her resistance was entirely futile. "I will not make a scene in front of the commission, Cecilia," Dallas murmured, stepping so close she was forced to lean back to avoid his chest. "Walk with me now, or I will throw you over my shoulder and carry you out. Your choice." The threat wasn't an empty one. She could see the feral, barely contained violence swirling in his ice-blue eyes. Humiliated, with the weight of hundreds of predatory stares burning into her back, Cecilia allowed herself to be marched out of the grand ballroom. The valet scrambled to bring the armored Maybach around, sensing the lethal energy radiating off the Chicago boss. The moment the heavy car doors clicked shut, sealing them in the soundproof, tinted cabin, the silence shattered. "Is it true?" Cecilia demanded, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. She twisted in the leather seat to face him. "Did you buy Arthur's gambling debts? Have I been working off my brother's life this entire time?" Dallas poured himself a glass of amber liquid from the car's minibar, his movements terrifyingly calm. "Arthur was in deep with the Moretti family, Cecilia. He owed them $2 million. Do you know what the Morettis do to people who default on $2 million? They don't send collection letters. They take limbs. And when they run out of limbs, they go after family members." He took a slow sip, his eyes pinning her to the seat. "I bought his debt to keep you safe." "To keep me safe?" Cecilia laughed, a harsh, broken sound that scraped against her throat. You bought my brother's life so you could own mine. You let me believe I earned my place. You let me believe I was valuable to you because of my mind. But I was just a pet you bought at an auction. You are valuable to me, Dallas snapped, his calm facade finally cracking. The glass in his hand threatened to shatter under his grip. You think I let just anyone handle my encrypted ledgers? You think I trust anyone else in this God-forsaken city? You are brilliant, Cecilia. But you are also a flight risk. If you knew the truth, you would have taken Arthur and run. I couldn't allow that. You had no right, she screamed, tears of fury hot and stinging in her eyes. She felt utterly exposed, her heavy body trapped in the tight, corset-like bodice of the red dress. The silk that had made her feel like a queen an hour ago now felt like a brand, a symbol of her submission. I quit, Dallas. The moment we get back to Chicago, I am packing my things. I'll figure out a way to pay you back, but I am done. Dallas lunged across the wide back seat. Before she could gasp, he had her pinned against the leather upholstery, his massive frame caging her in. His hands gripped her wide hips, his thumbs digging into the soft flesh of her stomach through the silk. You aren't going anywhere, he breathed, his face inches from hers. The scent of bergamot and danger was intoxicating, suffocating. You think Lorenzo Costa told you that, out of the goodness of his heart? He wants you, Cecilia. He saw the way I look at you. He saw what you mean to me. He told you the truth to break your trust in me, so he could swoop in and take you. Let him, Cecilia spat, though her heart was hammering a frantic, terrifying rhythm against her ribs. I would burn Miami to the ground first, Dallas promised, his voice devoid of any hyperbole. It was a cold, absolute fact. You are mine, Cecilia. You have always been mine. From the moment you walked into my office 3 years ago, trying to hide those gorgeous curves in a hideous black pantsuit. You thought I didn't notice? You thought I just saw a calculator? His eyes dropped to her mouth, dark and hungry. I noticed everything. The way you bite your lip when you find an error in the accounts. The way your thighs rub together when you pace. The way your stomach curves perfectly into my hands. His grip on her hips tightened, pulling her flush against his hard body. I didn't buy Arthur's debt to enslave you. I bought it to ensure you could never leave me. Cecilia's breath hitched. She was entirely trapped, physically cornered in a bulletproof car, financially indentured to a mafia boss, and emotionally paralyzed by the raw, terrifying confession spilling from his lips. You're a monster, she whispered, a tear finally escaping and tracing a hot path down her cheek. Dallas reached up, his rough thumb gently wiping the tear away. His touch was jarringly tender compared to the violence in his words. I am the devil, Cecilia, he corrected softly, and I have finally caught my angel. Now, we are going back to the penthouse, and we are going to fix this. The private elevator ride to the Ritz-Carlton penthouse was agonizing. Cecilia's mind was racing, trying to find a way out, trying to formulate an escape plan. But where could she go? Dallas controlled the police, the politicians, the ports. If she ran, he would find her. And if he didn't, Lorenzo Costa might. The moment the elevator doors parted, Dallas strode into the living room, tearing his tie off and tossing it onto the white sofa. Sit down, Cecilia, he ordered. Cecilia remained standing by the elevator, her arms crossed over her chest, the heavy silk of her red dress pooling around her thick legs. No. I want to see the contract. I want to know exactly how much my brother owes you." Dallas let out a harsh, bitter sigh. He walked over to his massive oak desk, unlocked a hidden drawer, and pulled out a thick manila folder. He didn't hand it to her. He slammed it down onto the glass coffee table between them. "Read it," he commanded. Cecilia cautiously approached, her block heels sinking into the plush rug. She picked up the folder and flipped it open. She expected to see loan shark markers, promissory notes, "I owe us," signed in her brother's sloppy handwriting. Instead, she found bank transfers, dozens of them. Wire transfers from offshore accounts based in the Cayman Islands, all routed to a dummy corporation. She squinted at the documents, her financial brain automatically analyzing the routing numbers. These are payments from the Costa family. To Arthur. She froze, the blood draining from her face. "Your brother didn't just have a gambling problem, Cecilia," Dallas said, his voice terrifyingly gentle now. He walked around the table and stood in front of her. 2 months ago, Arthur approached Lorenzo Costa. He offered him Russo Logistics' shipping schedules, the manifests for our illegal arms shipments, and the security codes for the Chicago ports. Cecilia shook her head violently. "No, Arthur wouldn't do that. He's an idiot, but he's not suicidal. He knows what you would do to him. He did it because Lorenzo promised him $5 million and a safe haven in South America," Dallas stated. "But Lorenzo never intended to pay him. Lorenzo intended to use the information to wipe out my operations, and then he was going to kill Arthur to tie up loose ends, and he was going to take you as a trophy." Cecilia's legs suddenly gave out. The sheer weight of the betrayal was too much. She sank onto the edge of the sofa, the folder slipping from her hands and scattering across the floor. Arthur had sold her out. He had sold out the man who employed her, putting a target squarely on her back. "I intercepted the communications 6 weeks ago," Dallas continued, kneeling on the rug in front of her. It was a position of subservience that looked entirely unnatural on a man of his immense power. He reached out, taking her trembling hands in his warm, calloused ones. "By the laws of the syndicate, I should have put a bullet in your brother's head the moment I found out, and I should have tortured you to find out if you were complicit. But you didn't," she whispered, staring into his eyes. "No," Dallas agreed. "I didn't. Instead, I quietly rerouted the ships, fed Arthur fake manifests to give to Lorenzo, and absorbed a $20 million loss to make it look convincing. I bought his silence, and I bought his debt from the Morettis to ensure he couldn't run anywhere else." Dallas leaned forward, his hands sliding up her arms, pulling her toward him. "I broke every rule I have ever lived by, Cecilia. I put my entire empire at risk. I let Lorenzo think he was winning." "Why do you think I did that?" Cecilia couldn't speak. Her throat was tight, choked with a chaotic mix of horror, relief, and an overwhelming, terrifying warmth. "Because I love you," Dallas confessed, the words rough and heavy, pulled from the deepest, darkest part of his soul. "I love your brilliant mind. I love your fierce loyalty. And God help me, I am obsessed with your body. I am obsessed with the way you look in this dress. I wanted to kill every man who dared to look at you tonight, because every soft, beautiful curve on your body belongs to me." He didn't wait for her to answer. He surged upward, his hands burying into her dark, severe bun, pulling the pins loose until her hair cascaded over her shoulders. His mouth crashed down on hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a conquest. It was the desperate, starving kiss of a man who had denied himself for 3 years. Cecilia gasped against his mouth, and the moment her lips parted, she surrendered. All the years of hiding, of trying to shrink herself, of feeling too big, too fat, too unlovable, vanished in the heat of his absolute devotion. She wrapped her thick arms around his neck, pulling him closer, matching his desperate hunger. Dallas groaned, his hands roaming frantically over her body, worshipping the heavy swell of her breasts, tracing the deep curve of her waist, and gripping her wide thighs. He made her feel magnificent. He made her feel like a goddess carved from marble and silk. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathless. Dallas rested his forehead against hers, his eyes dark with desire. Arthur is on a private jet to a rehab facility in Switzerland. He will be safe, but he will never return to Chicago. You don't owe me anything, Cecilia. Your debt is forgiven. You are free to walk out that door right now. He pulled back slightly, framing her face with his large hands. But if you stay as my equal. Not my assistant, not collateral. You stay as the Queen of Chicago. You stay in my bed, and you wear whatever the hell you want, as long as I am the only one taking it off you. Cecilia looked at the ruthless, terrifying man, kneeling before her. He had stripped away her illusions, eliminated her enemies, and offered her the world on a silver platter. She reached out, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. A slow, confident smile spread across her face, a smile that held the power of a woman who finally knew her worth. "Well," Cecilia whispered, pulling his lips back down to hers. "It's a good thing I like the color red." Did Cecilia make the right choice staying with the ruthless Dallas, or should she have run from her gilded cage? The Mafia underworld is full of dangerous secrets, and this is just the beginning. If you loved this intense, twist-filled romance drama, hit that like button right now. Share this thrilling story with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping, real-life audiobooks. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next shocking update.